Okay, how many people we have going to speak in public participation this evening? Okay. Nancy, down the back there, that you?
That's me.
Go right ahead.
Me first? Okay, I just wanted to take a few minutes of your time to clarify some misinformation that was shared at the end of the last school board meeting by some community members about the LCOC. I wanted to assure the school board that the LCOC never had a renter that paid $500 and hasn't had a renter since the end of last summer. That the heat challenges that occur on our side of the building also occur on the elementary side of the building. You have rooms on that side that are in the 90s during the winter and also in the 40s. The reason for the doors to be kept open on one side of our building is to assure the fire suppression system doesn't freeze. And this year we did have one issue around that we worked with the school on taking care of. I wanted to be sure that the LCOC knows that that the LCOC and the school system have in place systems already to separate the cost of electricity and water. And that prior to me, the LCOC spent some money in regards to removing debris, paying for dumpsters. And since last August, the LCOC put $3,000 towards the heating expenses, spent $1,400 to repair the mixing valve major leak that wasn't addressed. We've spent over $400 in supplies to fix the doors. We spent $1,500 to put flooring in 2 rooms. We've put hundreds of volunteer hours and weeks of staff time in taking care of ceiling tile pieces, and we're not finished. We're going to incur an expense for splitting the space in some of the bigger rooms for tiles that we have. We anticipate spending $3,000 to put a hot water heater over on our side of the building to assure hot water in the kitchen. It's an issue on both sides of the school. And we have spent hundreds of hours disposing of everything that was in the building. Although the school board paid for a dumpster, all the physical labor to fill it was done by LCOC folks. And finally, I do want to make sure you're aware of the great collaboration that's happening between the LCOC and the school, evident by the 8th graders being on our side weekly during this school year. Healthy Acadia using our facility for the education on the food part for the 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, and our ongoing support of the school system. And I just wanted to make sure you had the facts straight. That's it.
Question for you.
Yeah.
A while ago, I have a question.
Yeah.
A while ago, we had communications from the LCOC. They wanted to renegotiate terms of the lease.
A while
What is
ago,
that?
the LCOC asked about using some insurance collaboration so we could be,
There were actual terms in the email that I got from Tim Doyle regarding changes that were requested being made into the lease.
right, and one of those, one part of that conversation was that the LCOC needed to work with the school around the insurance pieces, and Tim had that information. And my understanding, I think, at that meeting was the superintendent was gonna gather some information in regards to that issue on the insurance piece, and then the LCOC and the school board would have some conversation of renegotiating the lease around those expenses.
Right, we haven't heard any further communication since that email.
Okay,
I would like to speak to that. The last time I spoke to Tim, he said that he had left Mr. Johnson voicemail and email. He said he had met with you originally, and the 2 of you were supposed to get back together, and he
No,
had
we
not
didn't meet
heard
at all.
since. And he assured me that he had already met with you about the lease, and therefore
My other question to you is that in terms of the lease agreement, any entity that goes in there to be, let's say, a sub-renter, sub-lessee, has to be approved by the school board?
I can't assure you that that's in the lease or not. I'd have to look and
It
see.
is, okay. So I understand there's a thrift shop going in.
We're in some conversation about a month-to-month lease with the private business in regards to filling the space for this.
So I'd ask you to check the lease, because that clause is in there.
I'll check it.
And if you can find out, we can get together on maybe some lease changes or some lease adjustments and so on like that.
Well, I think we could have a conversation about the lease. I'm not saying what we will or won't do. We have a lease till the end of next 2021, and, you know, I would hope that, there's thought that the LCOC collaboration would continue. I mean, residents of
I will,
Lubec, can I finish?
I will be in touch with you, okay? Question?
Well, I just wanted to kind of balance this out a little bit and thank the LCOC because you are providing all sorts of great services for our town and for our school and the school kids. And certainly all the details have to be worked out, but I wanted to thank you for the work you're doing.
And you know, I just finished my thought, that my board reminded me that the residents of Lubec voted years ago to not knock down the old high school, to keep the building, and that, as a taxpayer in Lubec, totally unrelated to my job, that's a really great use of that space. That's all.
Any other public participation? Go ahead.
I just had a question as to the vote a couple weeks ago, in not renewing a teacher's contract. Just curious what qualifies the board to make that decision, over and above the administration of the school?
That I really can't comment on because it revolves around personnel issue.
And the personnel issue was, the administration's aware of this personnel
And
issue?
as far as personnel issue, meaning it involves someone as an employee of the school.
Right,
not
so if it
not that
involves an
this
employee
person-
of
not
the
that this
school,
person has an
the
issue.
administration is aware of these issues.
And we have followed the rules and laws regarding renewing a probationary teacher.
Then my second question would be, at the last meeting on May 9th, I believe it was requested that it be put up back on the agenda, and it needed to go back and be looked at to see if that was even a possibility. What was the outcome of that guidance?
There was no action taken during the executive session.
Well, no action can be taken in executive session, so after executive session, there was no action.
There was no action.
So was there not an action to get guidance on whether or not that could be?
I can't discuss what went on in the executive session other than there was no
You can't vote on
action.
anything or do anything in executive session, but during the
We
meeting,
didn't
is it
have
not
no action.
requested that?
We had no action to come out of the executive session to have any vote on.
But wasn't it in public session when it was asked if it could be placed back on the agenda?
It was actually voted to go into executive session to discuss a matter, a personal matter.
So whether or not an item can be put back on the agenda is not a personnel matter. That's a matter of the agenda.
Okay.
No, I'm asking a very legitimate question, and I'd like to get an answer.
I have
Was it asked-
I have no comment on it because as far as it revolves a person that's working in the school, and I can't comment on that out of executive session.
But the discussion during the public session was whether or not that could be put back on the agenda. Is that not correct?
That I don't believe is correct. We
No, that's
discussed
correct.
going into executive
Is it
session.
noted in your minutes that you're voting on tonight?
We went into executive session to discuss a personnel matter.
But okay, can I get a copy of the minutes that you're voting on tonight? After they're voted on, please.
But a motion was made by Melissa to have it put back on the agenda, and I believe it was seconded by Ari. And so I don't recall what the outcome was. The motion was made to have it put back on the agenda.
Okay, at our previous meeting, there was a motion made to, there were questions asked about whether or not the matter could be revoted or could be taken off or so on. we adjourned into executive session on a personnel matter. Mike's correct about that. And when we came out, there was no action on that personnel matter, and that is indeed what the minutes reflect. So if I could offer some clarification about what has been discussed. And this is procedural. There's nothing personnel about it. This is nuts and bolts procedure that's in the public domain. Stephanie asked about, the board and overriding the recommendation of admin pertaining to continuing nominations. That's a procedural thing. The process is the superintendent can make a nomination, but ultimately this board can vote their conscience, and that is what they did. That's not a violation of process. That's the process is I make a nomination. This board can still vote their conscience. That's a procedural thing. So if you're asking, why can they do that? The board
I
can
know
vote,
why they
the
can do
board
it,
can
it's
vote their
what
conscience.
qualifies them to do it. Well, what qualifies them
Well,
to do it?
they're,
Not
they're-
support their administration, who is why, it's the reason why you're there. I
Okay.
sat at that table.
Yeah.
I sat there for many years.
I mean, if you're asking and if I'm missing your point, I apologize, but when you say what qualifies the board, their sheer position as board members, they are the duly elected board members of this community. So by virtue of them holding this position, that is essentially what qualifies them, if I can use that term, to vote as they did. They can vote their conscience, but apart from that, and maybe I'm missing your point, but they can vote their conscience, and what gives them the authority to that is simply the fact that they are elected to the board. Now, I may be misunderstanding, but procedurally, that's my
But
answer.
if the basis, so I guess maybe to expand upon my question, if the basis of not approving it was because the teacher was not qualified, you as the administration has verified that yes, the teacher is qualified. What's the basis for saying, no, not qualified, we're not gonna rehire that person? What qualification do they have to override that, other than the conscience, so-called?
I mean, the board, as I said, the board can vote their conscience. I can't answer for why the board votes the way that they do. I can't answer that.
Okay, but the other question was there was a motion in a second, I believe, on floor. Was that item ever voted on, or just, there was no vote, it just went into executive session?
I think there were questions at the last meeting about the agenda, and the comment was made at the last meeting that the chair and the superintendent collectively comprise the agenda, but ultimately the chair's got the final say about what goes on the agenda. And, this has come up around the district. I work for the board, and if the chair doesn't want something to go on the agenda, then it doesn't go on the agenda. I mean, there is a process for agenda adjustments. You can see that in the agenda tonight. But ultimately, what goes on or off the agenda is a combination decision between the chair and the superintendent. But the chair, as an elected member of this board and elected from within as the chair, has the final say over the agenda.
So by saying that, then tonight, under adjustments to the agenda, any other member of the board can make a motion to put that back on the agenda.
Yep.
Get a second and actually have another true vote.
Procedurally, that's allowable. You're correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other public participation? I saw her first. Sorry.
This is just in general, I'm not letting it reflect on anything that's going on here, but I just wanna say, and Mr. Johnson mentioned this in the past, you're losing kids at that school. And you're still hiring teachers or faculty or whatever it may be, and I know when I worked at Blue Cross Blue Shield, we lost the GE contract, and 90% of us got laid off. They did try and disperse people through the company, I was one of them. No one wants to see anyone lose their job. You're losing children, students are leaving. You said, Mr. Johnson, that's not a good thing, the numbers are going down.
Yep.
So why would the taxpayers have to keep paying for jobs that are not needed at the school? That, as a taxpayer, worries me. That we keep putting money out and keep hiring more faculty when we're losing children. I'm sorry, but this town, the average age is 62, you get in a retirement town, you've got to start trying to promote families, get more students here, and then you can have more teachers. more faculty. It just makes sense, there has to be a balance. If you don't have that balance, it's falling on us taxpayers. I'm trying to work and support my family, and I'm still paying for a school that is losing students. And you're trying to keep the same number of faculty in your school, or hire more.
It's a special education teachers, the
No,
number they
it's-
have, they need to have.
Well, from what I've heard, that they've hired more teachers, and you're still.
But we're
losing
talking about
students.
the special
Yeah,
ed.
well, that's
Okay,
what I said,
okay,
it doesn't
we're
reflect
getting
on
into the
anything
weeds here.
special ed. I'm just saying, numbers wise, if you're losing students and we haven't started doing layoffs or whatever, not saying they should, I'm just saying we need to start having a happy balance.
Okay, I don't recall any more faculty being added.
Right,
There have been no more teachers been added to what we have now,
okay,
so,
I'm just saying as a taxpayer, because I don't have a child
Okay.
at school anymore, but I know
Understood.
children have left, and that's just my concern as a taxpayer.
Amber,
I'm here to voice my concern about the sports banquet that we traditionally have had, where the kids would come at the end of all the sports seasons, and the night would be for them. We would sit, we would eat, we would talk, and the coaches would come up and speak about the kids, especially the eighth graders that they've coached for so long. This year's sports banquet was over in 25 minutes. We have 10 sports. I just would like to let you know how important I think the tradition is to have a real night for the kids. For their sports achievements, they spend a lot of time doing this. They work very hard to keep their grades up to play. I don't think they got their night this year, and I hope that next year we can come up with something that the coaches as well would agree with. Maybe as more of a collaborative thing, because this one was very short, very sweet. Nobody got their night. I just wanted to make that known and see if maybe we could protect that tradition that we've had going forward.
well, I can say I wasn't there, I was down in Boston, so I don't know exactly what happened at the sports banquet. But I know the coaches and the kids put a lot of effort into doing what they do. And coaches especially get, accolades from me, doing what they do, stepping up, so. Question.
I just wanna add to that, I had no idea this was even gonna come up tonight, and so I don't have anything prepared, but I think, it is important to let the coaches get up, the coaches are at all the games, to let them kind of say a few kind words about the kids, about the team, about the situations that the kids, sports is about building character, it's not just about wins and losses, that's not what this is about. We've been fortunate to have some wins, but ultimately it's about building character, and it's like Amber said, a lot of parents and a lot of kids, they gave a lot of time and a lot of effort. And I also feel like that's really important to give them that night to be able to, I don't care if it takes 2 hours or 3 hours, honestly, that's just my personal opinion. I'm sure people disagree with it, but as a coach, I'd like to be able to say, talk about my kids and talk about my team and talk about the accomplishments and the things that they did. So I agree with Amber. I think it's very important to keep that tradition alive.
Thank you. Any other public participation? Go ahead.
Now that it's been deemed procedurally okay to make a motion and adjustments to the agenda, I just would urge the board to please reconsider adding your appointment of the current special education teacher with no adjustments.
Any other public participation?
I just want to say something really quick. I think that we're at that turning point that you've been wanting teachers here. Here we are. We've showed up, we're coming. We try to stay out of the drama as much as possible. And there has been a lot of drama in the past years at these meetings. And for me personally, I want to teach and I want to do my job well and I want to go home. And I want to have our school be the best school it can possibly be. I want parents from away to want to send their kids here. I want them to say, boy, that Lubec School is really shining in sports, it's really shining in academics. I wish my kid could go there. And to do that, we need to work together. here is our opportunity. Here we are. We're reaching out to you saying that we have a concern. We're asking you to please reconsider that vote. Taking Miss Libby away would be taking away a huge asset at our school. So this could be our turning point. If you want to see us more, I think we need to work together and stop working against each other. And everyone knows I do have concerns about why I feel that some people are on board. And I just want to say, if you're not here for the right reasons, I just wish you would bow down and move on and let someone else come that is here for our school and our community.
Any other public participation? Okay, to consider the approval of May 9th, 2019, school committee minutes as written with corrections as recommended by the superintendent of schools.
I know we accept the minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? All in favor. Okay. Okay, principal's report.
So the water heater came in, but we didn't have any hot water this morning because the circulator pump is going in the ceiling. So that is the next phase of what Eastern Plumbing and Heating is doing.
Okay.
And then the only other thing I have is Mr. Ashby has been working on getting a contract to help the boosters when they buy new uniforms at a discount. So I have an email here from him. And the reason I'm bringing it is because I don't know if it takes board approval to enter into a contract.
Yes.
So it's page 1. I thought that's what you told me. So it's a two-sided. Page 1 starts the conversation. That's yours, I have one in the office. It does talk about 35% off retail uniforms, and all field gear, and then 10% back in that. And then an additional 5% and an additional 2.5%. It's with Nike, I believe. And I know the boosters is looking at getting some new uniforms for different teams.
So yes, it does take board approval to sign a contract. Go ahead.
Question, do we know, how much the boosters have raised this year? I know they've
I
been
don't know,
busy.
so they've been very busy. I don't know if it's final, if they've paid out all their expenses yet. I know banners haven't been ordered, so I don't think that is, Stephanie.
No, I know they've been very busy, so I did. They have enough to contribute to this?
They've done quite well.
Okay.
And it may not necessarily be this year, it might take part of another year, I'm not quite sure where
That's what they're there for.
they are.
How old are the uniforms?
We'd love to know.
Oh, some of them are. I don't know. At least 8 years, maybe longer.
Okay. Anything else?
So I don't know what to do with that, just hold until the
Um,
next meeting or?
Yeah, I mean, to enter into any kind of a contract, it requires board approval and so on like that. So, depending on what they're looking to buy and so on like that, and what quantities,
So,
and when this is all gonna happen. But I guess you can't find out until you find out how much money the boosters have raised and how much is available.
Right, so let me put that down.
Did he get his new goals?
They've been ordered, I don't know, that might be what's in the highway. That's what it is.
They're in.
Okay, anyone from the school board have anything? Go ahead.
I would like to respond to the comment about working together with the teachers, because I've been thinking that there are 3 reasons we're turning into a retirement community, and I speak as a 70-year-old. One of them is housing, one of them is jobs, and one of them is not getting people here for the school. I've been thinking a lot about the teacher-student ratio, and in a bigger city, that would be a dream situation. With that few kids and that many teachers, relatively speaking, the potential there is to have an incredible academic program. That alone could start bringing people in because they would want to be a part of that academic program. So I personally endorse the concept of working with the teachers to create an educational environment that becomes known for excellence rather than siege.
Okay, anything else from the school board? Okay, superintendent's report.
There's several items in my report this evening. A couple of extracurricular appointments as well as some additional information. First, I'd like to appoint Bill Ashby for soccer coach. I'd also like to appoint Dari McConnell for junior high volleyball coach. Both of those appointments are for the upcoming 19-20 season. Mike mentioned the soccer goals. They're here. I'm happy to say that we were able to purchase those. And just so the board is aware, you've heard me mention some old, very old in some cases, grant funds or small accounts that we have on hand, and I was able to use those to pay for that. So just so everybody knows where they were coming from. $1,737 came from a high school equipment sales fund. So when we sell equipment, money was put into this line. So we purchased part of the soccer goals from that line, which I believe is consistent with the original purpose. Additionally, pages stuck together. Here we go. An additional $1,734.32 were taken from the school health program. Under school health program supplies, that line has $9,970 on it. And I remember when those grants were available, and if I'm not mistaken, that was used to purchase some of the equipment that's currently on the stage that we are recycling or disposing of if it's in disrepair. So I believe contributing to the purchase of the soccer goals is indeed consistent with the original purpose of that grant also. Finally, $13 was taken from something called the school mall fund. And that would, I don't know what that one is, but I strongly suggest that those are indeed local funds, those $13 that were generated through the sale of snackies or other items. So I have referenced these funds in the past. And in this particular occasion, I feel that I've been true to the original purpose of those funds. So I don't feel that I need this board to vote specifically for that transaction, but that is where the money came from. However, part of the reason I point this out, in addition to simple transparency, later on in tonight's agenda, if you choose to accept a bid for a security system, these are the same funds that I'm going to use, but I will require the board to vote separately because we will be taking it from a different location in the budget, specifically instructional television. And there is enough money in that particular account to cover the quotes for a security system, but just so the board knows when we get to that point on the agenda, if you accept a quote tonight, I will be asking you to vote to use those funds specifically. Continuing along in my report, just so the group knows, parents of any student who is currently being homeschooled will be receiving a letter from me directing the parents' attention to the State Department of Education's homeschool portal. I am required to keep a roster in my office of all students who are homeschooled around the district. If you're curious, there are about 20 or 21 around the district. The state has established a homeschool portal to help parents through the process. There are online forms. It's a simple, electronic signature or download and print. Assessment data can be uploaded. There's contact information. But just so the group is generally aware, all students, families of students who are being homeschooled around the district will be getting a courtesy notification from me that just directs parents' attention to the new and improved Department of Education homeschool portal, which is available for their use. One other item, two other items left. I apologize. I'd like to inform the board that Dari McConnell is going to be reassigned to the pre-K ed tech position for the 19-20 school year. Currently, we have a long-term sub helping us out in that capacity. But Dari has expressed an interest in switching over to that. That will create a vacancy for a Title I tech. Title I federally funded, and that will be posted in the coming months. Finally, tonight, I'd like to read a thank you note from the Kilby family. As many of you are probably aware by now, my assistant, Helen Kilby, longtime employee of the school department, her son was tragically killed unexpectedly in a car accident in Pembroke a short while ago. On behalf of the Lubec School Committee, we did make a $100 donation to her grandson's scholarship fund at the request of the family. I thought that was a logical step in recognition of Helen's service to the Lubec School Department, and I'd like to read a note from the family. Lacey, Michael Jr., Ron, and I would like to thank you from the bottom of our heart for the generous donation you gave us for Mikey's scholarship fund. The past few days have been incredibly difficult for us, but knowing we have kind and caring folks like you in our lives has made this horrible situation more bearable. May each of you be richly blessed. That from the Kilby family. That's all I have in my report for this evening.
Okay, adjustments to the agenda.
I do not have any.
I'd like to move, add an item to the agenda to reconsider the renewal of the lease contract.
Okay, so exactly what is that you're adding to the adjustment there?
Reconsideration of the renewal of the lease contract.
Okay, so on the motion to adjust the agenda. All in favor? All opposed? There will be no adjustment to the agenda. Any new business, old business rather? Any new business is to consider the adoption of policy BBBDA, school committee declared vacancy caused by absenteeism. This is the second. We do take a peek at this, right?
Yes.
Do I have a motion on that? Do you have a copy of that?
I distributed the copies, the copies that I had.
Right here, these are the extras.
Yeah, I read it. This is all in line with main law.
Yes.
Okay, so I have a motion on this? Harry. Second on that?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? 5-0. To consider discussion of special education / FERPA notification.
Yes, at the board's request, and I tried to synthesize the nature of our discussion at our last meeting on this subject, and in pursuant to that, I have given you a 2-page document. The front page are the additions that I am proposing, that I spoke of at our last meeting, and the page right below that is what Tina distributed, and that's what's in your existing handbook. The second page in your handbook has the FERPA notification. I was asked to provide additional information or additional notification to parents on the topics that we discussed at the last meeting. So what you see on the front page is my attempt to comply with the board's wishes. And if there's something you want to add, I can do that, but that's what you have in front of you on page 1.
Question.
Family education rights and privacy act office.
Mhm.
In Washington.
Right.
Our federal office is in Boston. That's where.
I'm sure there are. That particular notification references Washington.
So to file a federal complaint, it wouldn't go to
I'm not familiar with the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act office. I'm familiar with the, the Office of Complete Resolution.
Yep.
For the federal government. Isn't that the next step? You can go through the state, you can go through the government. I've never heard of the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act. That wouldn't have to do with that only has to do with records, not special ed and rights.
The FERPA specializes in records, included under the FERPA umbrella, would be elements of confidentiality, but its primary thrust, and I'm not a lawyer by trade, I apologize, the primary thrust is indeed around student records. And it deems many records confidential by nature, provides limited access to school department employees based on position and need. But indeed, when the act was originally formed, it did address records more than anything else.
So you can do a state complaint or a federal complaint.
I believe it is possible to complain directly to the federal government. I suspect that they would refer somebody to the state agency, but I'm sure it's possible.
Oh, that's why I was just wondering if that was there. We have due process office, Maine and federal. Since special ed is so federal.
Yeah,
It's governed by federal
right,
laws.
and it is a federal requirement that the individual states have a mechanism, and that the mechanism that we use under the due process office is listed there. And that one is probably the most commonly one that's used around the state. But that contact information came right off the state website.
How about the Office of Disability Rights, and they right to contact them also.
They do.
So
is this something that will be put into the handbook?
That would be my course of action because that's our most commonly used methodology of notification parents. However, I have saved that front page electronically. Theoretically, I could email it to Kathy, who does the school website, and it is something that could easily be uploaded to the school's website, I would think.
or both.
Or both.
Okay.
I would just like make a comment that I would like the special education department of the state and add it right next to it. The
Disability rights.
the disability rights office that is in Augusta.
Okay.
Just so that they know that there's a state and a federal area. And, either one of them can
Yep.
direct them.
Sure.
So, but they are completely separate, but there are two
Right.
different mechanisms.
Right,
Wow.
the Disability Rights Maine is a completely different organization than the State Department. That is.
They work mostly with federal, and this would be mostly state, but they do have the option of using state or federal. I think it would be good to have just two addresses and two phone numbers, because they're non-political. Both of them are completely
Right.
just for the child, basically.
I mean, if it pleases the board, you can direct me to add contact information for Disability Rights of Maine. I will do so.
We can put that into a motion. Can you put this into the context of the handbook and the website by adding that?
Right now, I make the motion that we add, in addition to the due process office of the Maine Department of Special Education, that we also add in the disability rights office. Information, address, phone number. Right next to it.
Okay, have a second on that motion? All in favor? Consider a security system upgrade.
So I brought extra copies along. The first one is from Seacoast Security.
Can I interrupt for a second? We had a vote to add this in. Does that vote include a vote to adopt this policy with the addition?
I believe it was discussion, not
Okay,
discussion.
Oh, okay.
We've already got FERPA notification.
and that's required by law currently that we do the FERPA notification. So that's established.
That's already there. It's just to add some more information into that. Sorry about that. You don't want to
So
listen?
this one is Seacoast Security, this one is Fielder.
Mine is
Could I prevail upon one of my board members to just read the amount of each one so I can record them for the minutes?
There's actually two copies.
Okay, Seacoast Security. Has a total installed price of $12,248.30. And this is the same people right now that actually monitor our system presently, right? Okay, so we've had a long-standing contract with these people. What is that contract on it, money?
I don't know, that goes through the other office.
I have to look, I might not have it with me.
Top of your head, it's, it was like 3,000 a year or something like that.
It'd be in the 3 to 5 range.
Other than, yeah, I mean, when they have to respond and so on like
Yeah,
that, that's.
it would be in the 3 to 5 range.
So these are the same people that actually do our monitoring presently. So question is, if we go to fielding, will Seacoast Security still monitor our system?
I can tell you that schools that use fielding, if there's a fire alarm or a break-in, a broken window, whatever, their respective contact information, contact people are notified. So I suspect that it's a different type of monitoring, but I can't believe that Seacoast would monitor a system that isn't theirs.
Okay, and fielding, security, and fire has a total price of $13,986. And you can see, you know, under the description of what's involved and so on like that, I mean, I have no idea actually what these particular devices are. Some look like cameras and wall mounts and monitors and so on like that. Seacoast kind of breaks everything down a little bit, describes it a little bit better. Question?
Well, a lot of these terms sound familiar to me also. Has anybody really dug into this and know what we're getting? Which one do we get the most from?
Well, Seacoast has it broken down a little bit more, let's say, user-friendly as far as what's included.
And Seacoast includes the first hour for doing.
Do they include maintenance work for fieldings?
I don't see anything here.
No, nothing.
I don't see that either. No, this is like
The labor is the last word, but it's
nothing connected to anything else.
Well, based just on price, I think Seacoast would have a better deal for us by almost $1,000. And as far as, you know, they already do our existing monitoring and so on like that. So,
Is the code still good? Said it expires in March. Will they still honor this?
you have contact with him as far as would he honor this quote now?
I have not.
He does business with a couple other school districts. I know Eastport and Perry both use fielding to a great extent. I would be surprised if he wouldn't honor it.
No, I'm saying
No,
Seacoast.
Oh, Seacoast, I'm sorry.
We had theirs quite a while ago. We just
Yeah,
got
we got this, I
fielded,
think, back in December.
Yeah.
So.
With Seacoast expired March 18th, 2000. Is their quote still valid?
If the board voted to accept Seacoast's quote, obviously, I would contact them to verify if they would accept it. That would be a big ticket item for them. It would be a sizable contract. I'd be surprised if they wouldn't honor the quote for $12,248. It would surprise me. I can't speak for them, obviously, but I would make the phone call and find out. And for some reason they won't, this would have to appear on another board agenda.
More input from the board?
This is the end of our meetings.
It would, on our current schedule, if the budget is adopted, on June 24th, I expect it to be, I'm gonna show an increased savings tonight. We would have an August meeting, so conceivably, this board, if it comes up to reconsideration, we can hold it again on it in August. So the work would still proceed very early in the school year.
I move we go with Seacoast Security pending an investigation of whether the quote is still the same.
Can I just wanted to point out, I'm ready to second her motion, but I want to point out that the building quote has 26 cameras, the Seacoast has 16, I think. So they are proposing to put in 16, ultimately 10 now, so more cameras. Seacoast. It's very confusing.
Who monitors Seacoast? I mean, because they're involved, right?
Yeah.
So who, when they come happens, who comes and
That's, yeah,
takes care? They come
They,
from
they,
there.
they do right from Rockport.
Seacoast.
Yes.
I'll second this.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? That's for Seacoast.
If it pleases the board, could I get a sense of whether or not the board wants to use these unexpended funds? Because if you do,
Yes.
it has to be a separate vote because you would not be using it for instructional television. So that's a recommendation from the auditor as to disposing of these funds.
Tell us
How
where it
much
comes from.
is, and how much is in there?
Yep. There's $17,184 on that line. And the motion, and I jotted down some sample language here, just as a suggestion. Motion, use unexpended instructional television funds to support the purchase of a new security system. Does that accurately reflect what we're talking about?
And I will make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Any further discussion?
How old is that grant? Do you know? The
So last time
the
we had
old,
a baby here,
I'm gonna say back in days of high school, old.
and they had a television studio.
When I was student teaching at Callis High School, they reserved like 10 minutes in the morning for ITV, and that was 1990.
Easy now, don't date yourself.
1995, the fall of 95. I was at student teaching at Callis. So I'll give you some idea.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor? There you go. Can't wait to see this one. Consider a quote from Roofing Systems of Maine.
They came in like January. And I had to keep going. You can see the date, I didn't get back to them until May.
And this is to repair, if you're familiar with the school, the janitor's closet area between the cafeteria and the gymnasium. The back of the building is a room that's approximately 25 feet long. That the roof, the substrate on the roof is so far gone that we dare not walk on it because it might collapse. So that includes, the rubber coating on the roof and stuff like that, which has been repaired a number of times by some local people here, and it keeps leaking and it's causing problems. So, cleaning, priming, and batten cover is required. Restripping approximately 200 linear feet of existing batten. Cover strip uses a 9-inch pressure-sensitive flashing. Remove existing copper regular flashing to roof to the wall condition, so.
So this does not include repairing the roof,
if necessary. So
well, if it's.
Right. if it pleases the board, I would point out that I did not change your budget to match that quote of 14,275 for the reason Melissa is getting at. If the roofers come here and they open up the roof and the subdeck and the
Yeah.
decking needs to be replaced, or there's something that needs to be done, I left 20,000 on the line, which is what we put in there as a planning number, and I gotta believe would be adequate if there was some additional repair work, whether it's flashing around the fascia, whether it's the deck, the roof deck beneath the membrane needs something.
I
if
believe the
there's-
last time they were here, they were saying that some of the actual decking, the substrate below the
Right.
rubber roofing needed to be replaced. So that's what they're getting at. Any wet or damaged roofing will be replaced on a time and material basis, so.
Question, would it be possible that there's asbestos or lead in there? I don't know how they are constructed, because it says there's no existing regulated roof materials. Do they expect to maybe find some?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah?
they'll find some there, I know they will. Okay, because you can actually see it inside the building, looking up, you can see where there's been water that's permeated right through, so.
No, but
No.
can you see asbestos or lead?
Hmm?
Can you see, materials that are hazardous? Do we expect to find hazardous materials?
Probably
So-
not in that sense.
Not that,
no.
okay, alright.
I don't think-
Unless, I mean, were there ever shingles that used to have?
So when they go in there, they're gonna find some material that's gonna have to be replaced. So,
But probably not hazardous,
no, probably not
Or
hazardous.
dangerous. Okay. Because that would be quite costly.
And they probably throw that in basically to cover all the bases and so on like that. There was at one time when we were thinking about tearing down the high school, that we had to have the windows tested for butyl. And that would have, upped the cost significantly, probably by $18,000 to $20,000 per side of the school, so. I think that's probably something they just cover their bases with, so. It's actually less than I thought the quote would be. I thought the quote would be somewhere around 20,000, but with time and materials and replacing some damaged roofing, it's probably gonna be at 20,000. So, do I hear a motion on this?
I'll move to accept.
And do I have a second on that? Okay, any further discussion? And all in favor? 5 to nothing, so that's quoted out. To consider awarding bus bids. This is for the 2 buses that are down at Randy's place there. For the wagon. Right. We have one response.
One response.
Okay, what was the minimum we set on that? Did we change that minimum?
I don't believe we changed the minimum, and I'm going from memory, but I thought it was 1,500.
And Randy bought the other one, correct?
He did.
Did we receive money for that already?
I can double check.
This is from the Yates Repair. And he is submitting a bid of $800 on the 2001 International School Bus and $800 on the 2005 Freightliner School Bus, number 83, Lubec School Department.
800 on each.
800 on each. Personally, they need to move. Go ahead.
For some reason, I thought it was like 500 that we said it.
We set a different minimum for the bus that's sold.
The bus that sold was a different year, it was like an 82.
Was that one the one that was 500?
I think it was. That one was
And we said
older
this one
and
at
in
1,500?
worse condition.
So we have 2 buses that are sitting down there rusting away. taking up Randy Hall's property. Myself, I think it's a fair number for each bus to dispose of them.
But Stephanie's question, on that 30, if we paid the amount of 1,500, I'm assuming that meant 1,500, both buses, is that correct?
Yes, per unit.
So this is over.
The other bus
No.
the other bus that Randy bought was set at a lower price.
No, I understood that. So this is half of our minimum bid.
Is this money earmarked for anything special?
It is not.
Where does this money go? Just goes back into the pot, or does it go?
Goes into the general fund.
Okay.
Yeah, the school department.
They've been sitting there how long?
2 years. The other one's been sitting there probably 3 years. That's the one that had the fire in the axle, I believe, 3 years ago.
Did these get rebid?
This is the second.
This is the second.
I mean, did we advertise it again, or
We did.
yeah?
Is it more than the first bids we got?
I believe it's about the same money. And I really don't know what they're worth. I mean, I was given an arbitrary figure, whatever you can start it at, and just go from there. This is the second time we put them out to bid.
I mean,
And I know that Randy Hall has been very good not charging the school department storage fees on his property.
I mean, if it pleases the board, other school departments that put buses out to bid, that's the common method we use to dispose of buses that no longer need inspection or whatever. And this is in the ballpark of the kind of money that other departments have let them go for. It would be unusual.
And we did have the language in there that we could accept or reject any or all bids.
Yep.
So, if the board pleases to accept this, we can, and we're within our right to do so.
I don't like the fact it's not responsive. If we have a minimum bid and it comes in at half. That's not responsive to the request for bids. But if it's, well, I guess my question is, if this is in the ballpark, why did we set minimum bid twice what they
I
were?
mean, we did not have those buses appraised. I mean, you could have gotten Randy or any other qualified mechanic to estimate what it is. The usable parts, the reason that these buses get picked up for bid, many people want them for storage. They take the seats out and use them for storage. In some cases, parts can be scavenged off the engine. If you happen to have a piece of equipment that uses a similar type of engine, whether it's a diesel engine of a certain size and capacity, you can swap out parts. That's the real value of either scavenging parts or using them for storage. That's usually what they're used for.
I understand that, but just for the future, I'm not clear of why we wouldn't have a minimum bid that is more than we would expect to get. Why would we just not say we're accepting bids and accept and reject whatever amount they throw at us?
It's strictly a local decision.
So the question is that I have, do we have a motion on this to accept this bid?
I don't know if we accepted it.
Okay, so a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor? Okay, so Mr. Yates has 2 old school buses. Thank you, Peter. Okay, continued discussion of the adoption of the Lubec School Department proposed budget.
You're welcome. So immediately I'll inform the board and our guests here what the changes were between versions. At our last meeting, it was brought to my attention that we would indeed have one student attending Machias High School, so that change was made to the tuition line. It will show 4 at WA, 1 at Machias. Also, the other change can be seen under, and I would call your attention to this specifically so we can all see it on page 10 under facilities maintenance. Mike and I continue to research the requirements and time frame for a boiler project, and it became apparent that it would take longer to go through the process than anticipated. So the change in your budget under a building maintenance HVAC system, the 15.5 was increased to 28.5. And that is a quote that we have been given, a verbal quote as to what it would cost for engineer work, design specifications, bid specifications for a set of drawings. That's what that 28.5 refers to. And that line has been reduced from 75. And what I did was I took the first year's payment out. In your last budget, there was a projected first year payment for a boiler project, the first year payment. Since we're working with an extended time frame now, I took that payment out and increased the line from 15.5 to 28 to accommodate the drawings. So those are the only two changes in your budget. If we look back on page 1, what's the impact of taxation? This particular version where it says total local revenue all the way over to the right reflects a savings to the taxpayer of $72,092.27, which is a little less than half a mil, something around 4/10 of a mil, approximately. 1 mil here in Lubec, 175,000. So a little less than half a mil. The rest of page 1 stayed largely the same, actually did stay the same. You can see state subsidy listed there, $240,799.56. You can see that we're still planning on using $150,000 in fund balance forward. Grand total of all revenues, this budget, the gross budget is going down $47,946 compared to the previous year. So that is good news. On page 2, salary and benefits for elementary staff members that you can see here, and those are listed on the right as well, the specifics. You also see lines for technology, general supplies, equipment, dues and fees, and so on at the bottom of the page, where it says total elementary instruction, this cost center going down $78.52 and 36 cents.
So the position of special ed teacher, is that in there?
That would be listed in the next cost center that would be on page 4. And it's listed at the top where it says teacher salary. Yes,
I have a question where it says grant funded under the ed tech.
grant funded, yes.
And this, the new ed tech 3, is that the one-on-one?
No.
Which one is the one-on-one for special?
Okay. The ones that you see here where it says new Ed Tech 3, that one I think would be the regular classroom Ed Tech, I think. The reason I say that is because the one-on-one I think is funded under local entitlement, but those are the two positions in question. One is your regular Ed Tech that is replacing the retiring Linda Maker. And this other end, you have another one we have a student who requires a one-on-one. So those are the two positions.
But Linda Maker's on the.
I'm sorry. I apologize. This board, at a previous board meeting, voted to put the Ed Tech classroom, special ed classroom Ed Tech position back in. I apologize.
I want to make a note of that
Yeah.
also. That if you read the newspaper article in the Quaddy Times regarding Eastport's budget, they were also recommended to remove an ed tech from the special education class.
Yeah.
They voted to put that ed tech back in, as we did.
Yeah.
Against the wishes of the special education director, who said that it wasn't required. But they, like us, thought it was very important to put that ed tech position back into the special education class.
So I apologize for that confusion. That new position, that is the position that we're talking about, what the board wanted to put back in. The one I alluded to previously would be organized under regular instruction.
Looking at the sped teacher.
Yep.
If we get an applicant that has some experience behind them, their salary could be a lot higher than that. Do
Yep.
we wanna think about that?
I mean, that's, you can't predict who you're gonna hire.
We're already maxing out the health insurance too for a full family.
That right there, yeah, because your contract would say, the new contractual
we're
language
already-
would say what your percentage is.
We're already
Yeah.
anticipating.
And you might hire someone that has,
Right.
minimal experience that only has single, participant in healthcare.
Yeah, it could go,
But
it could
if
go
we,
either way.
if we hire somebody who is at the $40,000 pay scale for a teacher.
We don't know who these people are, so.
Well,
Yeah,
in,
but we have to, we have to budget.
That's why we because we don't know.
in contrast here, are we gonna get in, Linda Maker was at the top of her scale, she's retiring at 30,000. That's gonna drop back down to 19.
Yeah.
Are we gonna get somebody with 30 years experience
Okay,
in
that,
here? I mean, cause there's a give and take here.
there is, you're right.
And also the Ed Tech 3, why are we budgeting 26,000?
Again, for that particular position, in Ed Tech 3, the advantage there is that in Ed Tech 3 can work on a pull-out basis, and Ed Tech 1 has to have line of sight supervision by rules. And Ed Tech 1 pretty much has to be in the classroom with the teacher. A 2 or a 3 can work in a pull-out situation.
Can you help me understand, we've heard that filling the position for the special ed teacher is gonna be a challenge.
Mhm.
So what happens when the school year starts next year and we don't have one?
Okay.
If we didn't have
How
So
many applications do we have right now?
when I left the office, we had 2. Now, to answer your question, if we didn't have somebody for whatever reason ready to go right when school starts, you'd be looking at starting the year with a substitute or a long-term sub, and we'd keep applying, trying to get somebody. But there's not an easy answer to that. And it would be the same in any position.
Well, we do have 2 applicants.
We do.
Are we gonna be, is there interviews scheduled?
I'll take care of that, that's my responsibility.
Well, I'm just asking a question.
I'm just answering, I'll take care of it tomorrow morning, as soon as I can.
Yes.
I just got one application in today.
Was that 3?
No, I just got the second
Oh,
one
I see.
today.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Okay.
I have a question on why in Ed Tech 3, Connell started at 19
Mhm.
as an Ed Tech 3. Why is an Ed Tech 3 for special ed 26,000? Do they get
Again,
more?
an Ed Tech 3 would be paid more than an Ed Tech 2 or an Ed Tech 1. But,
Well, she's an Ed Tech 3 also.
okay, then what you're seeing here, in my opinion, is a reasonable attempt to budget conservatively. By putting this money in your budget, if we end up hiring an Ed Tech 2, then you're gonna have a little wiggle room on your salary lines to offset a teacher who might come in at more than 31,425.
So we have wiggle room both ways.
Yes.
Okay.
I just want to be noted for saying I'm not liking the wiggle room that I'm seeing for the special ed teacher salary. I think that's a low amount.
If this board
We
wants
might
me to,
lose somebody.
if this board
if
wants,
we do get it.
if this board wants me to increase the line, you can tell me to increase the salary line for the teaching position by $5,000 and still adopt an amended budget. And I can add 5,000 and I'll show you how the numbers work, so you can proceed. The other thing that I would say is budgeting this amount, even if we had an applicant that was strong, that we wanted, that I'm gonna nominate, that we're gonna hire, and it was more on the salary scale, we'd have to follow the salary scale by contract. However, you do have a $2 million budget. So if we had, hypothetically, if we had to pay somebody $40,000 in salary, they're gonna be over by $8,575. as your superintendent, I gotta believe we could find $8,575 somewhere else in the budget. So essentially, we would be absorbing it because you have a $2 million budget.
I think the budget is fine right where it is, salaries.
But
Are you suggesting, Tina, that you would feel hampered by that number? I mean, you would hire
Yeah,
based
if,
on,
if somebody comes along with experience and we say that's what we can offer you.
yeah, but
that
okay.
shouldn't.
So
It doesn't work that way.
Tina's making a good point. I would say this. If we have somebody that comes in very strong, well-qualified, experienced, fill in the blank, whatever, and we offer them the job, we can offer them the job in good conscience. We wouldn't be paying them $31,425. We're gonna pay them whatever the teacher's salary scale calls for in the CBA. So if I'm in an interview and this question has come to me, and again, a candidate says, what can you pay me? The number that I give a candidate is based on the collective bargaining agreement, not necessarily what's in here. Because of the reason that I mentioned, if you've got a $2 million budget, if you need to pay a candidate $5,000 or $6,000 more dollars because of that place on the salary scale, you can do it. You know, Tina's concern is warranted because she wants to be able to get the best person that we can, and that speaks well of her as the principal. But as your superintendent, I'm telling you that this would not be a deterrent in my mind from making an offer to a strong candidate. But it's a board decision. If you want me to increase the line by 5, you can, and then just direct me to adopt an amended budget.
Oh.
Just a question.
Yeah,
And I might have just missed it earlier, I don't know. Under extracurricular stipends, I assume that's the sports program, maybe?
What page?
We're on 6, the first one.
Page 6, okay.
I see a negative difference, and I'm just wondering. Maybe I'm even looking in the wrong spot, I'm wondering if
Okay,
all the sports were,
I think you're looking in the wrong spot, but if you look at where it says other instruction, it says total other instruction, that cost center where we pay extracurricular stipends for coaches and activity advisors along with officials' fees and so on, that increased by $27.93, and that's, I'm sure, due to a calculation in the benefit lines up above. At the bottom where you see total student and staff support down $46.93, that negative number is due to the fact right above that where the school nurse's salary was eliminated because we're fortunate enough to have a nursing position that's grant funded through the medical center. So the negative $46.93.75 you see at the bottom of page 6 does not refer to extracurricular. Yep.
good catch, huh?
Can we go back to the boiler, line?
Page 10, sure.
We talked a little bit last time about, getting someone to come in and, either, and talk to somebody about, some conservation measures that we could put in place because we don't want to heat a sieve. I don't want to heat a sieve. So, to help us come up with some long-range plan of tightening windows, replacing windows, et cetera.
Are you volunteering to find that source? Because I welcome it.
I guess I'm willing to work with somebody else on that.
Maybe I can ask what I think might be a similar question in a different way. Will the increased $13,000 give us leeway to have additional factors considered in designing the system, including the extent to which the SIP can be?
Okay. So a couple things that I would say. The additional 13,000, so we're all on page 10 if those, for those of you that are following along. The 28,500 on that would accommodate a set of drawings. The drawings can be pictures of a gas fire boiler system with circulating pumps and air ducts, or the drawings could show solar cells on the roof or geothermal underground. the decision of what the drawings are going to be of would have to be made beforehand. At our last meeting, I told the group that we would not need a public hearing at this juncture. We will at some point because of the amount of money involved, but we just aren't at that point in the process. So I think the answer to your question is that conversation needs to happen before we contract with a firm to draw.
So that's really long, yes.
Yes, a really long yes.
Thank you.
So, as a board, we'll be coming up with the engineer and
What they want.
what they will be doing, or
Okay.
as a superintendent.
So as I understand the process, there would have to be a hearing. And just so the group knows, Mike and I were on a conference call with our legal services, who has advised us about the process. There must be a formal hearing at some point. But it quickly became, at least in this area, a chicken or the egg. What comes first? Do we want to do some legwork around a proposal or a proposed schematic, an idea before we have the hearing? Or do you want to take the hearing and use it to inform what types of drawing that you want? I don't know if we have an answer to that question.
Do we have the time? I thought we were running on Band-Aids right now.
You are running on Band-Aids right
Do
now.
we have another year?
Hopefully.
Are we cutting it?
That's a good question, Stephanie, and this is what concerns me the most as your superintendent, because I see the repair bills from Eastern Plumbing and Heating. They're not as high as the fuel bills, but they're high, because there's a challenge in maintaining an antiquated system. You're talking about something that's vintage to the 60s or 70s probably, and it's literally a scavenger hunt to find parts. So I am concerned about how much time we have left.
Are there any other ways that we can solicit input so that we bring a schematic to a hearing, but it has, people have had an opportunity to provide input into what we.
I mean, Mike's done a lot of legwork, and he's in a better position to comment on it than I am, but I will say this. When a project of this type is considered, thoughts about maintaining the system, available resources around who can help us if something needs to be fixed, that has to be taken into consideration. And I don't know, or I wouldn't want to speculate about the availability of specialized maintenance if we get a system that's something out of the norm. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, Mike?
The problem we have here, you have to do with what you have the resources. How many companies that are available to handle a situation like this? It's not something you can put out to local bid because they just can't handle a system like this. If you're looking at alternative energy sources and so on like that, maybe geothermal and so on like that, you'd have to get someone in here to assess whether we're capable of supporting geothermal here.
Well, that was not my question. My question was including mechanisms to tighten up the building. So I'm not saying let's have a whole different heating system.
I mean,
But there are additional things that could and should be done to that building to tighten it up.
I mean, if we look right,
We're heating the outside.
if we look right in this cost center, a few lines up where it says building repairs and maintenance, heating repairs and maintenance. Building repairs and maintenance, there's $20,000 on the line. So conceivably, I could spend some of that $20,000 for better windows, better insulation. I don't know if we break out 25 caulking guns and go around the windows and doors, we might be able to get a bulk discount over hand. But there is a regular line where some of those things, Melissa, could be accommodated. Like common sense, stopgap things, what can we do immediately to help bring down our heating costs?
Common sense, but it hasn't been done.
Yeah, right, I hear you. But that line there would accommodate a fair amount of that.
Can you contact Efficiency Maine, see if they have a program? maybe they do have something for a school building or. for a
Well,
building.
I did, yes, and I did get in touch with them and they do have programs. All right,
Put the same one around I got.
right, so maybe that's not the avenue to go through. But I'll get back to them and see if I get a different person on the phone with some different answers, but maybe we just need to hire someone who knows how to tighten up the building and walk around the building and figure out what. I mean, that has been done, and there's a question back here or comment.
And we had a whole survey done on heat and the whole building and so like that, so. Question,
There was an energy audit done, I think the.
that's what I was referring to.
The funds came from someone in the LCOC.
Yeah.
And they did a pretty extensive energy audit, and they found, with some funds, they would be able to save approximately 53% of the heating costs by following 10 energy conservation measures. They didn't all have to be done at once. It could have been done in groups over a period of years. Their total cost at the time, I think that was 2013, would have been $409,000 with approximately a 5-year payback. It'd be about 53% less oil usage now, and one less boiler. The primary expense would have been about $250,000 to tighten the gym up with insulation in the floors, walls, and ceiling. That's where most of the heat loss is. As far as I know, none of this has been done. Some of it is very simple measures.
There's, in the case of the roof, of over the gym, I've received kind of a conflicting report simply because there's a different school of thought that would say if the gym ceiling is too tight and there isn't adequate circulation, the risk is condensation. And I've seen some cases where that would happen, particularly in the summertime on a humid day. But I'm sure there's profitable information in the energy report, and a copy was distributed at the last meeting.
But this wasn't closing off this was insulating the ceiling portion, leaving the roof portion open, the place that nobody is at and doesn't need to be heated. It was also insulating the floor so that the ground isn't being heated. About, I don't have that number here. But anyway, there's still a whole bunch of energy conservation measures that, as far as I know, have never been taken. And is it possible to start some form of reserve fund to start attacking some of these problems?
Yeah, I wonder.
So 53% reduction in energy usage for heating the building, that's significant. And had that been done in 2013, we probably wouldn't be looking to put a new boiler in because the boiler would have essentially doubled its life.
Can I ask for an answer in regards to, have you given consideration to less of a tax decrease and the start of some reserve fund thinking for A, the challenge of heating the building, or B, the challenge of buying a new bus when the next one comes due? Have you thought about setting aside some money with some long-term goals versus taking all the savings and just putting it back in? Just a question in regards to future budgeting.
I mean, conceivably, this board can designate some of your undesignated general fund carryover for one of these purposes. I was in Crawford, so last night I probably met myself on the road. I was in Crawford, I think it was last night, where they designated from their general fund $30,000 for bus replacement, and they're planning on doing that for 2 more years. That'll give them $90,000, and 3 years down the road, they're going to buy a bus. So that type of designation is possible. The counterpoint can be made that by bringing down taxation, that you can at least put a bus payment on the line, and now you arriving at the same point. But if this board wanted to designate such, you're your own fiscal agent here. Crawford had to put it on a warrant article and the town's got to vote because it's a different system of governance. But as an SAD, you're your own fiscal agent. So if you wanted to designate some of your general fund for such purpose, you can.
I think that makes a lot of sense. To either put money in to save or put money in to spend it and start doing the work. And do that in a phased way, rather than save up and do a bigger project. Just do it in phases.
Okay, and yeah, I mean, the board can do that. Again, I think it goes back to Stephanie's point about time. Crawford's on a 3-year plan to buy a bus. I don't know if you have 5 years for a boiler replacement.
No, I'm not suggesting not doing the boiler
Okay.
replacement. I'm not suggesting.
Oh, well, I apologize, I must have misunderstood, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm suggesting we do both.
Okay.
That a new boiler, we still need to tighten up that building. It doesn't make sense to heat the outside of the, around the school.
Question about the boiler. Was the boiler sized to replace the 2 existing boilers? Because with these energy conservation measures that were suggested, it would have eliminated the need for the steam boiler that's there now. The gym would have been heated with a hot water boiler. So what is the size of the boiler? What is the design right now for the size of the boiler? To replace both?
We're looking at
existing
replacing 2 boilers, including the steam and the hot water boiler that exists now.
With 1 boiler. Now by cutting the
2
energy
boilers,
usage-
sir. Replacing both boilers with 2 brand-new hot water boilers. That would replace the steam boiler that now heats the gymnasium building, which is probably the worst one that's, as far as in shape. Okay? And the other 2 boilers, the 2 boilers that we're replacing would be higher efficiency boilers than we have now, just because of the way they design and something like that. They'd be a little bit smaller as far as in size than what
But
it
their
is now.
BTU output would be essentially the same as the 2 existing boilers now. So we'd be using the same amount of energy, wasting half of it.
No, there'd be less BTUs.
But we'd still be.
Because they're
But
more
we'd still be
efficient.
wasting half of it, because it's going to the great outdoors, because we're not taking energy conservation.
I'm not an engineer, but I have spoken to engineers on this fact, yeah.
Right, but what they're saying is that the boiler is much more efficient, right?
The boilers now are much more efficient than what's in there by at least 50%.
So that's great, but we're still, it's still going out the windows and doors.
Until you either design an envelope that seals the building off or build a new building, you're gonna have that problem because of the building design.
Right, there's ways to improve it.
Absolutely, outlined in the energy study that was done. Absolutely ways to do it. And as a taxpayer, I don't see the purpose of spending $500,000 if we're not gonna address some of the issues of the waste that's gonna come from it. You know, if you're not thinking about securing the building or doing some insulation, why would we even put in a new heating system, because we're just gonna be heating the outdoors? You know, I think that there's a bigger point to that.
So, Mr. Johnson, you were talking about the $20,000 in the building repairs. And heating throughout the building repairs. And suggesting that could go to it, but it's put in that line, there's a line item there already on purpose. So it's already used, I would assume. We already go through close to $20,000 repairs.
Actually, on building repairs, we have pulled money through in past years, which is a good thing, because there have been years where we've been over on the line right below it, where it says heating repairs. So, in the larger picture of your budget, if you're gonna overspend one line, you better save money on another line, so they balance out. And that's what, that's what is happening in most years. The other thing I would call your attention to, the roof quote that you've already accepted, you can see the $20,000 below where it says building maintenance, specifically roof repair, that I alluded to earlier, so that is listed in this cost center.
So if we were to up one of these line items for windows and door, heating loss improvement, would it go under the building repairs and maintenance?
Yes, it would.
Well, I guess I would like to propose that we take 30,000 of this 54,441. That is savings, and add it to that building repairs to improve the efficiency of our school.
All right, so let me just ask a clarifying question. The 54,441 is the increase in cost center in comparison to the previous year. If you want to increase the line, you can.
So where are we at for the whole budget? Page 12, 47. I guess I'd still say add $30,000 to that. I mean, yeah. That's
Okay.
fine.
So just so everybody knows, if we add 30,000, if the board votes to do that, the board can. And what that would do is, I would put it on the building repairs and maintenance line, taking that line from 20 to 50. The increase to that cost center would increase by 30, go from 54 to 84. And that 30,000 would trickle in the other areas. But that's how it would be reflected. So if this board votes to do that, you can, and you can vote to accept an amended budget, but that's how it would function within the document.
Isn't there any grants out there for this kind of stuff?
First, I don't take away from, you only have $47,000 difference, and God forbid something big happens.
But we would have, I think there are grants, and there are grants that could probably be used to help defray some of the cost of the boiler. But we have to pay someone, I would assume, to do that, and this budget has to be voted on. So if we put money in here and then work on getting grant money, we don't have to spend this money, but we have to have a placeholder. We would have to decide to hire someone to do grants, to do a grant, to look into where the grant money exists and write it, big deal.
That was already brought up before, and it was, I voted for it, but it wasn't, it didn't go through the grant writer, hiring a grant writer.
Well, that was right, but this could be for a one-time grant rather than a position.
You said there's somebody on the school department, school district that does grants.
Okay, that person does the ESSA grant, which is the Title I exclusively, and that person is compensated because as a percentage of the grant that's allowable by the feds, that's 4% that person can take, and that's how they compensate it. But that is the only function that person performs for the Lubec School Board.
Is it up to your office then to find a grant writer?
It could be, however, my first stop would be in trying to find a grant writer would be to look at our existing staff, and I'll use Eastport as an example. Eastport, I'm happy to say, is the recipient of a $10,000 grant for music equipment. The music teacher wanted to have the ability to have like some recording equipment, so but the grant was written by the music teacher himself. And in the classroom, I was speaking with the teacher as we were talking about it. I said, well, you might be able to, spruce it up. They can't even buy a gallon of paint with the terms of the grant. It has to be for that equipment, and that's the terms of the grant. The grant funds that I'm familiar with facility type stuff, many times is the expectation of the local unit to maintain. However, energy efficiency of Maine has been mentioned in conversation previously this evening. I think it's worth trying to re-engage them and stay after them, because I know of some good work that they've done. I'll use Eastport again. They replaced the lights in both the high school gym and the elementary gym and seen a significant energy savings. They had to front something like $30,000, but 80% of it came back to them. So that, I mean, we've heard tonight that, for whatever reason, it's hard to get through, or you can't talk to the same person twice, or there's been some runaround, but that would be probably the best stop that I'm aware of for that type of savings, for that type of activity.
I say before we make a decision on moving money around in our budget, we try to contact them. I agree. You wanna do it? I don't think, I mean, it's not, I'm not doing it until 5 o'clock, so. Right?
So we have a motion to present with anything here?
Yes.
You do? Okay.
I can't stand to just let this go. I will try getting in touch with Efficiency Maine again. However, I think at this juncture, I would like to vote on increasing the line item to do work improving the efficiency of the school. If we get money to offset that, that's wonderful. But we can't guarantee that at this point, and we're voting on the budget soon.
Is that your motion to approve the budget with cabinet in
Where would you like to put that? What line item?
And how much?
30,000
okay.
on page 10, under building repairs maintenance.
So bringing the line item to $50,000?
and reducing the savings to 17.
Seven.
47 minus 30 is 17, isn't it?
Okay, if we look on page 1, by increasing that line, the gross budget will go down to a decrease of 17. So the 47,946.52, that's your gross budget. That number will be a negative 17,946.52. But in terms of taxpayer dollars, everybody circle total local revenue all the way over 72,092.27. If we increase spending by the additional 30,000 that has been moved, the savings drops from 72 to 42. So $42,000 in savings is nothing to sneeze at, but that's how it would function within the document. Your gross budget would be down to 17, but the savings to the taxpayer would still be down 42.
So do you have a motion as she's posted?
I've captured the motion and I'll read it, so make a check for accuracy. The motion that I have, motion to increase building repairs and maintenance by $30,000.
For efficiency, for building efficiency
Okay.
purposes.
Having one of those classrooms where the wind blows through my window, I know that we can't replace windows because the people came in and replaced windows not too long ago, former superintendent. But we got gypped, so to speak. The new windows are worse than the old windows. They even putting plastic on them or something to, we put the shade down, you can still feel the air come in. So even if it was just fancy plastic or something to stop the air from in, I think that would make the classroom warm in that sense.
Okay, the motion on the floor? You have a second on that motion? You have a second on the motion, which has been presented on the floor. Hearing none, motion dies.
What?
Okay, where are we?
I'm happy to answer any other questions about your budget, but at the moment, the document has not been amended, and it is as I have presented it at the start of this discussion. If this board is free to take whatever action they so desire.
Can I just ask the other board members what other ways we can reduce the heat loss that would be acceptable?
I think right now we have a $20,000 budget there. We need to work with what we have before we start taking away from the taxpayers. Once we've used some of that, then we can, we still have that $40,000, $40,000+. We can use that.
Like 40 plus what?
Isn't that what it is, $47,000?
No, not unless we amend the budget.
Oh.
And take that and put it into the working budget.
In the previous years, that money was in there, that $20,000.
Yes.
And was it ever utilized for efficiency? Has
I would-
anybody ever taken an initiative to even use the money that was already appropriated for it?
The money is used to a great extent. We don't always expend the line. Some years are better than others. But if I understand the board's intent, that money has not been used for this level of specificity. What are types of things where it would be used for? Best example, I think last year there was a concern raised about a concrete ramp outside one of the doors that needed to be repaired. It was repaired. Those costs came off that line. If there was a year, I think, where a section of the membrane roof over the main entrance that we use for the elementary school had to be fixed or repaired or something. Some of the funds came off that line. That was a much smaller repair, something in the $6,000 or $7,000 range, I think.
The gym floor needs to be redone. That's gonna be about $3,000.
We have a quote to resurface the gym floor that was deferred from last year. It didn't happen last year. If we do that, that will come off that line.
Here's my concern.
Yep.
30,000 seemed like a lot of money. It also seems a bit arbitrary.
It's absolutely arbitrary.
And-
Come up with another figure.
No, and it's not fair to me when I'm hearing $100,000 figures, multiple $100,000 figures of that. But 30,000 is gonna have any significant difference over the 20,000 that's already there.
Well, in,
So you'll understand.
Yep.
So my question is there any other place in the budget that we can look if we decide to start doing this? I'll call it weatherproofing as a short.
Okay, so what I would do is, if we happened on, a great opportunity and we got momentum and this work was going on, I would still use that line, and this is the example that I would use. Let's say we resealed some windows, let's say we looked at our doors and we looked at the ceiling and we increased our insulation, whatever. If we had to overspend the line by a modest amount, 24, 25,000, the line is 20. I would support doing that for this reason, because I think it's going to save us money in the long term to make us more efficient. And what I would do is try and save it on another line, because I know I've got a spending limit. Once the voters approve your budget and the spending limit is $2,183,668.93, I can't go over the limit. There is some room in lines. I can have the board vote to activate contingency. You can vote to move 5% between cost centers. So the answer to your question is there are some things that can be done, and I would charge it to that line.
Couldn't we use the money the LCOC is gonna pay us for heat?
Any unanticipated revenue could be used for that purpose. What I would do is I would make sure the board is aware how much revenue comes in and what we are using it for, because that revenue isn't booked into your budget. But the answer to your question is yes.
Oh, okay, so when they pay us for their heat,
we can use it to, make everything more energy efficient.
Yep.
Okay,
That would essentially function as additional revenue, yes.
so,
I would move to adopt the budget as submitted during this discussion.
We have a motion on the floor to adopt the budget as presented. Have a second on that motion? Motion is to adopt the budget as presented. Do I have a second on that motion?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Oh, go ahead. Be quick.
okay, yep, and I just wanna be quick about this, but, on our heating costs.
Mhm.
Is there a line saying that, I mean, is there a way that the people can vote whether they wanna pay LCOC's heat or not? I mean, right now we're paying for it, and it's included in there. And, I mean, that's not part of the children's budget, really, but, you know, or can we fix some way that we do get reimbursed in some way
Okay,
from
so
that?
two-part question. The answer to your first part, to the first part of that question is no, there is no way you could separately vote not to pay LCOC's heating in this budget, because the heating is one line.
Mhm.
And we already know that the heat itself can't be metered due to the design of the system. Then the second part of your question, I'm drawing a blank.
Can the taxpayers be notified when they're before us and they vote or, you know, they come to the meeting? You know, I think they have the right to know that this budget includes paying for the heat for LCOC, and we don't know if or when we'll ever get anything.
If I'm asked if I'm asked on the 24th when I'm making a presentation and it's our third and final budget workshop before the referendum vote, is the heat on in the high school wing? And the answer is yes, and my answer will be the heat is on to avoid a freeze up, which we had 2 years ago, and we're working on plans for a revised system, and that is the answer.
I've had a lot of questions on that.
I can imagine. And
Yeah,
we've heard some of those in previous meetings.
You just sit on the 24th.
Let's see, the 6th.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor.
20th, right? 20th, I'm sorry.
And we have a second on that motion.
Ridiculous.
Any further discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Carries 4-1. Budget's passed.
And then that's the 20th, I'm sorry if I said the 24th.
Yeah, the 20th.
I'm somewhere between Crawford and Dennisville.
Before we end, 5 o'clock workshop, 6 o'clock vote.
On the 20th,
On the 20th.
You want me to contact Cecil?
please.
That's June 20th, correct?
Right.
Can you sign the quote for the workshop, vote? What about the quote for security?
Oh, sign that.
No, they.
Yes, it was, it circulated, I don't know where it is.
I don't know, those papers are up, picking up after ourselves, not leaving.